Did you know your most powerful training tool when you bring home a new pet isn't only already in your home? It actually is your home. Before your dog ever learns a cue, your home is already shaping their behavior for better or for worse. Hi, I'm Liz Cummins, and I am a behavior consultant, and you have reached New Pet Start Here. This is episode 3, Setting the Stage for Success. We're going to talk about how to teach your dog how to behave just by using the setup of your home and prevent problems before they start. So first, I want to talk a little bit about why environment matters. And basically, environment matters because our dogs are learning from the second they enter our home. If we are structuring our space to prevent our dogs from being overwhelmed, protecting our things, the stuff we don't want them to get into, and making sure that they feel safe, they get to practice appropriate behaviors from day one, and they don't end up getting into the trouble that causes bigger behavior problems later on. So when we're thinking about environment, we're thinking about sound, we're thinking about movement, we're thinking about access points and places that will be particularly stressful. We're thinking about where our gear goes. We're thinking about what our dogs can see, what they might be reactive to or stressed about, what they might be particularly curious about, and what they might be destructive with if they are left unsupervised. So start thinking about what is in your home. If you are home right now, stop this video, take a look around, and see if you can identify 5 things that a dog could get into that you wouldn't want them to get into, just that you can see from where you're sitting right now. Basically, we want to take that environment and make it ideal or as ideal as possible for our dogs before they can get into all of the things we don't want them to get into. So first, we want to create safe spaces. So when I talk about safe spaces or safe zones, we want to think about gates, we want to think about pens, window film, doors, soft barriers, and even some barriers outside, like the one you'll see me setting up in this video on here, of a visual barrier between my porch and my neighbor's porch. And you actually see 2 barriers in this video. There's the one that I'm putting up, and there's one to the left side of the video, which is my cat catio, which is space for my cats to spend time outside where they are safe and secure, but also where the dogs can't bother them. So zones matter for a lot of different reasons. Some zones you might be creating are more about containment and preventing your dog from getting into trouble or getting into destructive things. Some of them might be about rest and limiting their activity and their options for that activity so they aren't getting themselves wound up. And some of them might just be about setting predictable paths so you can accomplish the things that you need to do over the course of your day. Depending on your house structure, you might be looking at needing to create more of these, or some of them might be kind of naturally there in your home. Open concept houses with big rooms, or rooms that flow together tend to mean more management needs to be added because our dogs simply can't be trusted with access to all of those spaces all at once before they've learned the rules of the home. The other thing that can create more need for management is larger windows and all of that beautiful natural sunlight you might get. If we have all of that visual access to the outdoors, depending on what's passing you by, we might be looking at the potential for barking, the potential for overstimulation, and hall monitor sort of behavior. So window film is a great solution for that. It allows the light to continue in. They can't push it off to the side. And they aren't constantly monitoring the outdoors. Pens and baby gates can be great for open concept houses because they can be flexible, they can be temporary, but they can kind of create zones and rooms. So think about different things like a rest zone where your dog is going to be training, where your dog is going to be pottying, where your dog is going to be getting maybe groomed or husbandry, where you're going to be spending time with your family, and then places where you don't want the dog to go. So whether that's into the kitchen unsupervised or into the kids' room unsupervised, or whether that's just a corner of the house that has a lot of valuables or sentimental items that you don't want the dog to crash into. Think about where you do and don't want the dog to go and what activities you're going to be seeking out there to kind of dictate what zones you want to create in your home. And you're also going to want to embrace your crate or your chill zone. So this is a dog resting in their crate in a very low traffic area of the house. Essentially, we want our dogs to be very used to crates. It's super in our favor to have a dog who's comfortable in their crate, not just because we want to be able to create space for our dog in our home, but also when they're out and about. If your dog ever needs to be boarded, if your dog ever needs to spend an overnight trip to the vet, if heaven forbid you are in a natural disaster or an emergency where your dog is in a shelter for the night. These are already stressful situations that we can make less stressful by having our dog be comfortable and safe in a crate. So creating a crate as a good space is essential early on for our dogs. The other reasons that we may want to use a crate are for unsupervised management. If you can't be watching your new dog, making sure that they're following the rules that you intend to set for your household, they should be restricted in their movement. For other dogs, they don't feel secure enough to rest, or they just haven't practiced lowering their own arousal, and they haven't practiced resting enough that they're able to do it outside of a crate. So giving them that space can help create easier time spent working on the good behaviors when you have them out and letting them rest and decompress when they're not. You also want to think about chill zones out and about in the house. So whether that's a dog bed or whether that's a blanket on the floor or whether that's a couch that you know that they're going to like to use, that you're going to set up in a nice sunny spot in the living room. You also want spaces that are open but also cozy and accessible decompression for your dog, even when they aren't crated. Both of these are going to help prevent overstimulation. They're going to help prevent management failures because they need that low pressure place to land and relax. And you want to plan ahead because your dog will find things to get into trouble with. We have a lot of things in our house that are going to be naturally intriguing, naturally interesting for our dogs. So think about what those resources are going to be and how to prevent problems before they start. So think about kitchen, living room, the kids' rooms. Highlight where things actually go before you bring your dog into these rooms and make sure that they are typically in their spaces and that those spaces are not things that the dog can access. So you want to keep your counters clear, set your dog up for success, because if they are able to counter surf once or twice and get big rewards for it, they will start trying a whole lot. You also want to store high value items where conflict aren't going to occur. If there are kids in the house, you want to think about toys. You also want to think about laundry. You want to think about laundry even without kids. As someone who has had many socks go missing, and not all of them are the kids' socks. And you want to think about food crumbs, where food waste goes. One of my favorite purchases, best purchases I ever made as a new dog owner was a trash can with a locking lid. Every single one of my visitors has trouble figuring out how it works, but it has prevented dogs from getting into the trash numerous times because there is a physical lock on the trash can, not just a lid. You want to make sure that you're avoiding surprise access. You want to always have predictable access because predictable access means predictable behavior. So make sure you have a sense of where your resources live. That includes food storage, both human food and dog food, dog toys, kids' belongings, where chews go, where the dog beds are going to be, and where the trash is going to be kept. All that predictability helps prevent conflict and set your dog up for success early. And speaking of preventing conflict, we want to take a look at our shared spaces and our natural bottlenecks. Doorways are super, super exciting spaces for dogs. So whether you have multiple dogs and you want to prevent high arousal conflict between the two of them, you see it's a very, very small bit of the picture, but there's my dog Mouse on the inside of the door, and you can see my dog Fig's feet on the outside of the door. Doorways are huge, exciting spaces, so plan for calm exits and entries. One of the first things that I recommend folks who are struggling with a dog who's super bouncy and excited to see them when they get home is bring in with you a toy or bring in with you some treats that you can immediately go into play or immediately scatter treats upon entrance. That way your dog learns to look towards the ground, look towards the toy, rather than bouncing up at you when you first come in the house. So think about how you can plan for calm exits and entries for you, but also for your dog. Same thing applies to your dog. If they're always running out the door, whether that's to the outside yard, whether that's to the deck, or whether that's out for a walk, if they're always running out the door, you're going to start your walks. You're going to start these interactions with leash pulling, with high arousal, with behaviors that you might not want later on. So if you start out preparing for this with treat scatters, with in and out games, having the dog run in the door and then out the door, and plan for those calm exits and entries early, that'll become your dog's habit and their expectations. Think about places where there'll be a lot of resources that housemates might be in conflict with. So kitchens can be resource hot zones. Front windows can be a huge space for high arousal and barking. The more that you're able to change that space to prevent those behaviors from happening in the first place, the better off you will be if you need to change the behavior. When we're thinking about looking outside, also think about the neighborhood you live in. Think about noise, traffic, dogs in the neighborhood. Think about your yard. If you have a yard, is it safe? Is it fenced? What distractions are in the yard and what points of exit are there that you need to be prepared to manage? Whether you have a yard or not, think about how exercise and decompression are going to look and how that's going to shape their behavior inside. One good walk can reduce dozens of micro problems, but that doesn't necessarily mean a walk in your neighborhood, and it doesn't necessarily mean a long walk. For me, my favorite place to walk in my neighborhood is the easement woods that have small paths through them. They are never super long walks, but they tend to be full of good smells. They tend to be devoid of big triggers for the dogs that I work with and the dogs that I live with. And because we can relax and sniff and be on a long line and not need to focus on a lot of management, it tends to be more reinforcing for my dogs and tends to burn a lot more energy for them. So the more that you think about how those walks are structured, how that outdoor time is going to be structured, the more successfully you can plan your dog's day. So when you're thinking about your dog's world, think about what the layout of your yard is, what the neighborhood dogs are likely to how they're likely to react to your dog, what they tend to do when they're out on walks. Think about what your walking routes are going to be and how stimulating they're going to be. Think about how your dog is going to have decompression opportunities in those environments. So as you're thinking about all of these things, you're going to start looking at choosing your tools. So these are some of my personal favorite tools, but consider what pens, gates, and crates fit best in your space and where you want to put them. Set up your window film, your treat stations, and make a plan for entryways and bottlenecks. Prepare your food puzzles and your snuffle mats ahead of time before you need them. So this is a picture. These are pictures of either my or friends' actual food prep and actual planning. This is my front window. And I have the lower half of the window with window film. I can still see out the top, but my dogs are somewhat prevented. I use pens to keep the large dogs separate from the tiny dogs. And my large dogs do have crates that are used for them. I use toy rotation bins and treat stations regularly. I have snuffle mats and food puzzles that are always prepped. The food puzzle picture is actually from a colleague's freezer because mine is never that organized and nice looking. So I steal this photo a lot. But having all of that prepped means that I can just reach for things when I need them. And my dogs are set up largely for success and largely to have their environment managed. So they're not able to access a lot of those trouble spots that we end up with when they're unsupervised, overstimulated, or just simply feeling anxious or unsafe. Your dog doesn't need a perfect home. Not everything is going to come together exactly as you want it the moment your dog comes home. But the more that we can make it a predictable one, the more successful your dog will be in not forming those bad habits. So whether you're welcoming a new dog or you're resetting the stage for one you've had for years, These small changes to the environment can create massive behavioral wins before you even do even a little bit of skill training or behavior training. We will be closing out our new pet series with episode 4. That's going to be common new pet mistakes and how to avoid them. So subscribe for more guides on dog behavior and training, and look for episode 4 when that comes out in 2 weeks. If you want deeper support, you can check out my self-led foundations course, the Starting Zone series, or reach out for direct tailored help just for you, available virtually anywhere.